Welcome back to the Behind the Well Show. Your host, Roger Abe, with Elias Randall. Elias, I have a question for you to start the show right off. How did the Elias family pool party go? I've been holding off. Usually we talk before the show quite a bit. I held this one back. I really want to know how this party went. I saw it on your calendar on Friday. Yeah. So I was really curious what the Elias family pool party is.
So here's what it is. So my mom likes to do an annual, she calls it a camping trip, which no one in our family does tent camping. So we'll go somewhere and rent a house and typically try to get one with a pool or by a lake or a pond, something like that. Well, right now my brother has a newborn and my wife and I, our youngest is not even 2. And we have a pool at our house. So this year, the camping trip, instead of traveling, everyone came to our house and we camped at our house, which, again, no one slept in a tent. Everyone slept inside. But we get together, we grill, we make meals, play yard games, swim, do stuff with the kids. And we can do all those things at our house. So we actually were the host of the annual family camping trip this year, and it was fun. So as you can imagine, if you got your whole family together, there's parts that are great and then there's parts that aren't so great.
So when did everybody leave?
Sunday, yesterday.
So that was the best part of the camping trip?
When it was over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So part of the reason I asked is we've had the discussion on previous shows that we believe the economy is slowing. People are starting to spend less money. So it got me thinking a little bit, was any of it financial? Not necessarily for you, but for your family members or anybody else. Like, why are we going to go spend the money to do this when we could just go to Elias's house?
So that's a good question. And there was a little bit of that, but when this got, typically my mom will bring it up at Christmas time when we're all together. Hey, I want to plan our summer trip. So she had a location picked out and it was 3 to 4 hours of driving one way. So then I suggested, because that's 8 hours total, right? And my brother and my mom live in the same town. It's an hour and a half from my house. So then I suggested, hey, instead of doing all this driving, right, because for us it's 3 kids in the minivan, and then for my brother it's 2, and it's a lot of logistics. Maddie and I will host it at our house, and then we can do it. You guys can get a hotel. But then, so we weren't spending any money on renting somewhere, but there were no hotel. No one got any hotel rooms, so we all slept at the house. So there was some cost savings too for doing it that way. That wasn't the main thing, but then someone did bring up, well, the hotel costs this, so I'm just going to stay at your house. And I was thinking, well, we were going to rent a house anyway. So that was probably nice too. Everyone got to save a little bit of money, I think.
Well, I think people are starting to look for ways to not necessarily be in maximum spend mode.
Yeah, I agree. And
I think people have been in maximum spend mode for the last 3 years, basically since COVID got over, especially on like ultra discretionary things, food, travel, entertainment. So I'll tell you something ironic this morning. We're getting ready to go down to Lake of the Ozarks here on Wednesday. And my wife goes, we're not going to eat out and spend all this money at these restaurants every single day because our kids never eat the food. Like we're going to literally we'll order 2 meals for the kids while we're swimming, and they have 3 French fries, and the rest, guess who eats it?
Dad.
Yeah. Maybe mom. Not that much. But our whole discussion was, why are we just throwing $100 bills at these restaurants when nobody eats any food? She's like, let's just because we're coming up with the grocery list. Like, what do we want to take? What do we want to pack on the boat? All those different things. So if Megan's thinking about it, other people are starting to think about it. And I don't know whether it's a just kind of over it mentality. Like we do a date night every week. Every week we have a standing sitter, and typically we go out to dinner. Well, about 3 weeks ago, my wife's like, I don't really want to go out to dinner. Like, let's do something different.
What did you end up doing?
We went out to dinner.
Oh, it's too hard. Yeah. Well,
No,
there was
but-
nothing else going on around here, so.
I mean, you know what, though? Saturday we went down to Iowa City, and we went to that art fest. So we did something different than just go out to dinner that day, although we did go out to dinner. We went to Wig and Penn, which was really great. But it just got me thinking, okay, Elias moved from a travel destination to a house with, probably 25% of the cost of what it was going to.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
We're kind of overeating out, not really because of the cost, but we've done it all. Like, if you got to eat every Thursday night, like, how many places are you going? You're just doing the same routine. And I just wonder if other people haven't had this happen too. There's a big rush after COVID to go do a bunch of stuff we haven't been able to do for 5, 6, 8 months. Is that wearing off, and is that going to have a lasting effect on the economy in conjunction with high credit cards, interest rates, all those different things? Does it cause the economy to slow a little further?
I'm sure. Yeah, it's a combination of all those things. And for cost and things, and you know this because you have a pool. We have a pool in a big yard. I was happy to stay home for the weekend and use my stuff because, as you know, when you have a pool, whether people use it or not, it costs the same. Like, there's no, you know what I mean? You got to put the chemicals in, you got to put the water in. Whether anyone's enjoying it or not, it doesn't matter. The cost is still there. So to have a big group of people there all weekend enjoying it, I do like that because I'm paying for it regardless.
It's like a farmer buying a tractor. They farm more acres to lower the average cost, right? If you buy a $50,000 machine and you use it on 5 acres, pretty tough to justify that. But if you buy a $50,000 machine and use it on 2,000 acres, different. Pool's the same thing. The more swims we get, the lower cost per swim.
I'm going to put up a chart at my house.
The cost per swim?
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
The more we use this, the cheaper it is per use. Please use it.
I was talking to someone the other day, and I ran across an article at the same time. But we've all heard this. I don't want to retire. And what's the motto in our office if someone tells us, I never am going to retire, Elias?
Well, typically that means that they don't have the means to retire. I do genuinely know people who want to continue working and could retire, but the vast majority of the time, they can't afford it.
Can't afford it, or they are using that as the reason why they're not going to save money. If a 35-year-old tells me, well, I plan on never retiring, well, that's basically your excuse for not saving money. But for the small percentage of people who never want to retire, I will tell you, I'm in that group. I don't really ever plan on retiring, but I've reframed how I look at my finances, and I'm setting myself up for financial independence. So think about the difference. Retirement means we're not going to work, like we're done. Financial independence just means I've got to the point where my means are enough that working is strictly a choice. And you know how I operate my personal finances because I see many business owners who never save because their business is what they're pouring everything into and they plan on selling it, and that may or may not work out. So one of the things I want to talk about for people who plan on never retiring is you still need to be able to have financial independence because there will be a point in time when you're not physically able to work. Whether you pass away, you have some memory issues, you become incapacitated, there is a point in time where all of us won't be physically able to work. And I think that part of the reason people, like you said, people say they're never going to retire is because they don't think they're going to have enough. So the first thing people that say they're not going to retire, they actually need a better financial plan. They do. Because otherwise, they're not going through the appropriate steps, Elias, to quantify what needs to be done to gain financial independence. And that's for the people who aren't retiring. The word and phrase for you is financial independence.
Right. Well, but yeah, you're correct. But most of I would say most people that feel that way, they're not in a situation of financial independence.
But a 35-year-old, so let's phrase it back. You got to look at two segments of people. Yeah, you have the person who's 62 years old that says they're going to work forever. They're probably not that helpable, right? Because they don't have it or don't want to save it. But a 45-year-old, a 50-year-old, a 40-year-old, if you're pre-50, go get a financial plan done and do what I've done. Hey, it's 62. I want to be financially independent. That's my goal. So my goal is based off 62, although I really plan. I mean, I'm not going to leave. Like, I'm not retiring unless I'm forced to, which could be a health thing. So pre-50, you need to have a better plan. Just think about this. If they don't do a plan, Elias, they're never going to be able to retire, because they haven't quantified what they need to do to be successful. There's zero goals. It's not real.
Yeah, I do agree. I do agree with that. And there's also, I think for people under 50, yeah, that's the best thing, to get an idea of what you do need to do. For the folks that are transitioning and getting close, JP Morgan actually just put out a study about partial retirement and spending. And I found it really interesting, which actually, after reading through it, it really does make sense. But initially I was surprised by the results of it. So another trend that's going on, and this is, so there's like your camp of, I'm never going to retire. And now I'm talking people that are at the age 60 to 65. Well, I'm never going to retire. They don't have the means to do it. There's folks that they're going to do a partial retirement. So they're going to retire from their career. They've been working 30 years, however many years it's been, and continue partially working part-time somewhere to have income. And one thing I found was interesting. So folks who are partially retired spend more money in retirement, which initially I thought, well, that's kind of odd, because you'd be thinking they're continuing to work to save, or maybe like spend down debt or something like that, which it does make sense, because there's kind of two ways to think about it. If you have what you need to be fully retired and you're working by choice, you probably do spend more money than someone who's fully retired and not working part-time. Because I'm guessing if I was in that situation, that part-time check, I'm just doing that because I enjoy it, and that money's going to get spent. Like, it's not part of my bigger picture. But then I think there's also I think as you kind of dive into the details of it, there are folks who have to continue working part-time because they have too much debt as they want to retire. They don't have enough savings. So I still think there's a large portion of people that are kind of being forced into that path. And one thing I found thoughtful from the study that they put out, people who are, which it's kind of, you read it and you're like, well, okay, yeah, but that's a no-brainer. Well, people who are fully retired have more savings than people who are partially retired and less debt, right? So it's kind of comes back to those couple fundamental things. If you can save some money, be responsible with your debt, and hopefully as you transition into retirement, be debt-free, that's your best opportunity for financial independence. And then you can choose what you want to do.
That's kind of a interesting insight, that the retired working part-time person has more debt. I'd really like to know, did they have that debt going into retirement, or
yes,
did they accumulate? So they had it going in. So maybe the whole
did.
idea was, hey, I want to retire from my job. I can do that, but I'm going to work the part-time job, maybe to pay that debt down.
Yeah,
Instead
could be.
And
it was
chunk out of
consumed
their retirement to knock it out.
Yeah, and the partially retired group had more mortgage debt and more consumer debt, credit cards and things like that are discretionary.
Well, I think that's good insight, but I think the whole point of it, if you're going to plan on not retiring, plan on figuring out how to get the financial independence, figure out what your risk capacity is, and get a plan done. And if you need help doing that, you can go to btwellshow.com or click the link in the description.
Are you ready to take control of your financial future? The financial professionals at Premier Investments and Wealth Management are the guides you've been looking for. Picture this: a financial plan tailored exclusively to you. Our team of experienced professionals will work closely with you to understand your aspirations and develop a personalized roadmap to get you there. Whether you're dreaming of retirement, buying a new home, or sending your kids to college, we've got the tools to give you confidence in your financial life. We'll help you navigate saving and investing, retirement income, and tax strategies. Our job is not just about making money. It's about helping our clients make smart choices. We'll provide you with the tools and knowledge to confidently steer your financial ship toward a brighter future. Are you ready to embark on your financial journey with confidence? Visit www.btwealthshow.com or click the link in the description of this podcast. Your financial future awaits.
Another thing I've been hearing a lot, Elias, is, we're back to almost all-time highs in the stock market. We're hovering around there. Some of the indices are there. And people are starting to ask, is now a good time to invest? I ran across a study by Janice Henderson, and it basically says, hey, you missed the rally. Now what? And I actually pulled some things out of here that I'm going to use for myself, and I thought I'd share it with some of the listeners. I've got this one, and then I've got another one, how to react to volatility in the market, we're going to cover too. But the mindset of we're back to all-time highs, it's only an all-time high right now. In 10 years, will this be an all-time high? If you think back to let's call it early 2020, December of 2020, the markets are at all-time highs. COVID hit. So all those people that were thinking, hey, is now a good time to invest in December of 2020? Well, in hindsight, pretty darn good time to invest. 2008, right before the great financial crisis. Pretty good darn time to invest.
You're saying before it even started?
Before it even started. If you look back, if someone said, Roger, you can take your money now, you can teleport it back to August of 2008, right before the great financial crisis, and that would be the one time we'll give you your opportunity to invest. Do you know how much money I give them? All of it.
All of it.
All of it.
Yeah.
So, yes, we are back to a point in time when we are back to all-time highs, which means things are good. Part of what I think people need to do is just adopt the right mindset of, hey, I understand if I invest, it could go down, but am I investing this money for the next 3 to 6 months, or am I investing this for the next 10 years? And once you've kind of evaluated that and you've determined how long you can put your money in, you can move on to the next thing. And one of the ways you can be opportunistic in a time when the markets are at all-time highs is find the segments of the markets, the pocket of the markets that haven't rallied. Think about this. We've talked about, when a real bull market is here, what happens? It gets breadth, which means more asset classes participate. If this is really going to roll through and it's a lasting bull market, other asset classes will participate at some point. So maybe instead of buying the high-tech growth names, you look to some other segment or pocket of the market that hasn't done so well, and that could provide you some opportunity and maybe make you feel a little bit better about investing a chunk of money at all-time highs in the market.
Yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit because I think that is a strategy that can work for the short term to help you feel better. I think also a way to think about this, and especially if you're a younger investor, who's to say that the largest companies and are like maybe they've rallied too much for you right now, but if you're 35, do you really think investing in the biggest companies in America, when people say large cap growth companies and stuff like that, if you do that starting today for the next 30 years, do you really think you're going to be unhappy with the result of that decision? Right? Like, I get that you can try to find an opportunity that feels good today, but the most successful companies, will they continue to be the best performers over time? I mean, no one knows, but I would assume one of my assumptions is that the biggest, best companies will continue to be that. The reason the reason they're expensive to buy is because they're a really great company and great at making money.
And it's interesting you say that, because when I'm a mutual fund ETF type investor myself. Like, that's typically what we buy, but I will look at individual stocks. The first thing I ask myself is, what do I think the use of this is in the future? Is it a fad, a trend, or is it sustainable? And the things that I buy are things that I believe are sustainable. I try not to chase fads because I know what happens. I'll buy and it'll go down. So I try to buy things that I have real utility that I use on a daily basis. So most people can look around and figure out what that is. Another thing is, we talk about the volatility. This is a great chart. Hartford Funds, they released this chart. It's called, in the short term, the stock market really appears volatile. And they broke it down if you looked at the quarterly returns of the stock market. And if you broke the stock market into quarters since 1984, I mean, there's a lot of like down quarters. But then they overlaid a chart later with the same investment viewed over time, a $10,000 investment. It was just it goes up, it'll blip, but it just keeps going up. A lot of how people view investments is how you're framing it. I can frame anything. And if I frame it in the right manner, people will believe in it, or it can make them scared. But I thought this was really enlightening. And here's what really stood out about this study that I'm looking at. It showed how volatility can provide significant opportunity. And here's what it is. It was a person who, anytime the stock market went down 8% in a month, 8% volatility, that's pretty volatile in a month. I mean, that's when most people would get scared. They would start to think, man, I got to pull out. But if you were to add $2,000, let's go back to 1984, every time the market went down 8%, you would have ended with $1.2 million. Okay? Conversely,
that's a pretty easy strategy.
I'm going to use this for myself. I'm going to use it, and I'm going to tell you why. You'll see why. So when the market goes down 8% in a month, most people get super scared. Right? You're going to get the call, should we go to cash? We got to quantify the risk capacity and try to counsel them through it. But let's say that person, every time the stock market went down 8% in a month, moved $2,000 into the 30-day T-bill. They would have ended with $260,000. They missed out on $1 million because they didn't have a strategy.
So what that shows is when things were right, when other people were getting fearful and going to safety, so you buy a treasury, over time you're worse off. Where had you invested that money in the equity markets, you're, in that example, you're $1 million different almost. It was like 1.2 or 260,000.
$1 million difference.
Right, that's a really large opportunity cost there. Another reason I think, right, because that's good investor behavior, what we're talking about there. And I think a thing to consider, especially for younger investors, people are living longer now. And a lot of that has to do with technology and how technology is making it easier to age. And I caught an article that caught my attention. We were getting ready for this show. It's titled 5 Ways Technology Will Change the Way We Age. And it had 5 highlights. And I think when we're talking opportunity costs, right? So if we have someone who, in your example, they ended up with $260,000 because they were not executing good investor behavior, versus the person who ended up with $1.2 million. Now both of these people are going to live longer, right? Well, the person with more money is set up for more success. And the 5 highlights, and these are really good. So 1, technology-driven transportation helps people stay mobile, right? So if you think about it, cars are much safer now with all the different safety features, backup cameras, even the mirrors will have a light to indicate someone on your left or right, and then ride sharing. So as you get older, there's really no reason why you shouldn't be able to get where you want to go. The cars can help you drive better, and then you can get a ride through an app.
Well, think about even not just the ride, Elias. You can get your groceries delivered. Everything you need, for the most part, through ride sharing and technology, you can get delivered to your house, which 100% makes it easier. I mean, I would think for a individual who's aging, the first challenge would be, if you can't drive anymore, how do I actually go to the grocery store?
You don't have to.
You can order it. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah, it can get delivered. And it's easier to work longer now. And we kind of covered this earlier in the show, but between remote jobs that are not physical, but you do have to know how to use technology to execute those jobs, you can work from home. And then also the gig economy jobs, right? Like if you're 70 and you want to drive for Uber or Lyft, that's not a difficult task to do. You have to have a nice, reliable vehicle and know how to use the app. So I think technology is also making it easier for people to work longer and earn income. And people also can stay connected better to their social networks now, which there's a huge correlation between people being lonely and then health risk. All the data suggests that being connected socially is very important for your health as you age. And we're not going to become less connected, right? So if we're not going to become less connected, that's going to promote healthier, longer lives. And you're going to have more means to be able to live longer and live a fulfilling life.
Elias, question.
Yeah.
The other day we were talking, maybe you were talking about this article. Is this the one where the MIT Age Lab suggests that not being socially connected later in life is the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day?
This is not that article, but this is similar. The things they're talking about, this is from Hartford Funds, but the things they're talking about are in line with that. And it's again, as you're saving and investing for this time in your life, it's important to know, because the example we gave where you can have $1 million more just by implementing a simple strategy, you might need that as you live longer. And the final two, which I think are really connected. So now with smart homes, your home, it's easier to just have a home and run it, because with all the connected devices and, with a click of a button, you can get your groceries delivered. You can order something you need on Amazon. You can just vacuum in your house. If you have a Roomba, how hard is it to vacuum your house? The robot's going to vacuum for you. So all those things help. And I think the most insightful one, the fifth one, and I think this is going to get bigger and bigger over time, and people are already doing it. Technology is going to monitor our health at home. Well, people wear watches now and wear devices, right, to monitor their heart rate, their steps, all the things they're doing. And what are the odds that over time that's going to be one of the main ways people track their health is through a device in their home? And there's already an application for it, right? Like all the watches that people wear to monitor stuff like that. So people are going to have access to more data about their own health. They're going to be more connected, right? Which means we're going to continue living longer. And we talked about that article a while back where, what was it, over the next 40 years, the number of people over 100 is going to quadruple or something. Like people are it's going to continue. And I think, really aging and retirement, it's at the end of the day, it's what you make of it. So if you're a younger person that wants to save some money and invest, I think keeping these things in mind, being a successful investor younger in your life is going to help make this part of your life easier as well when you're older.
Yeah, I think it's really important to keep all those factors in mind. But I really think what it highlights too, and you mentioned, when you miss out and have that investment gap, like you let emotions run this program, the detriment to your overall financial security is exponentially getting worse. Because if we're living longer, so just think of a person who missed out at $1 million. Let's quantify it into math. So you missed out on this $1 million over however many years, so now you're retired. Well, if you use the rule of 72, you can take your interest rate divided by 72, tells you how often your money will double. Well, let's just use 5%. Your money's going to double if you just went out and bought a product that pays 5% every year, which you can get right now. 5% a year, 15 years, money's going to double again. So that $1 million really cost you $2 million by the time you're 75. And then, oh, by the way, if you keep doing it, it now costs you $4 million. And that's what we're trying to do, is help educate people on how to make wise investment decisions and why we think a financial plan to figure out how much risk you need to take so you're not letting your emotions and the fear control your investment decision-making process. That's really what a plan does. The plan doesn't solve your problem. It highlights what you're doing good, shows you what you're doing bad, and helps you stay on track. With that said, if anybody's looking for help getting started with their financial plan, you can go to btwellshow.com. We're happy to do a plan and get you our one-page premier vision document, or you can click the link in the description. Elias, appreciate having you on the show today. I think it was a great show. I think we highlighted some really good things for people. Do you have anything else to say, Eli?
Yes, I think when you're one final comment on the volatility, and the volatility causes a lot of emotions in the market. I think anytime you look at a chart of the stock market, right, it's up and down, there's a lot of volatility, but the longer through time you look at it, that's how you eliminate the fluctuations, right? Because over time it does trend up and to the right, which is what people want. It just doesn't go in a straight line all the time.
With that said, I want to thank everybody for listening. Catch you next week.